Pi. Everyone knows what pi is. 3.14159265535, etc., etc., etc. But why is that irrational sequence of numbers so important? It's the ratio of the circumference of a circle to the diameter. No matter the circle, the ratio stays the same. When Miss Getz first told me that my assigned topic was pi is wrong, I first thought that she was telling me that the number itself was wrong and that it had turned out my whole life was a lie. When in fact, that's not what Miss Getz was saying at all. What Getz was trying to say is that pi is just not the most efficient way of doing things. In a Vi Hart video, she explains that every circle's circumference when laid out in a line has 2 pi times the radius in it. That's why the equation for circumference is 2 pi r. But this is only one example of when 2 pi shows up. Ever notice how many equations use 2 pi? Wouldn't it make more sense to have a letter? Tau, for example, equal 2 pi? Then, if we are talking about a quarter of a circle, we would be talking about tau over 4 as opposed to pi over 2. Doesn't that make so much more sense? So how did we get here? Once upon a time, there was a man by the name of Euler. He was studying complex numbers one day when he had the opportunity to write an equation. Either ei pi equals -1 or ei tau equals 1. He chose the first one, causing the entirety of math revolving around circles to be ultimately more confusing than necessary. But Euler was not a bad guy. He still interchanged tau and pi throughout all of his work. Who truly chose pi over tau? The world will never know. Basically, there are 3 questions that need to be answered to show that tau is ultimately superior. First, is it easier for math in general? The second question is it practical for real-life scenarios? And finally, is changing between pi and tau even feasible? Number 1, is it easier for math in general? Anytime you multiply pi by 2, it's adding an extra step that wastes precious time. Would it not be easier just to have a number to plug in? Furthermore, a full circle is equal to 2 pi, so if we are having pi in math class one day, and you ask for pi over 2, you are actually only getting 1/4 of a pi, as opposed to 1/2. But tau equals 1 full pi, so if you wanted half of a pi, you would ask for tau over 2. Isn't this less confusing? Number 2, is it practical for real-life scenarios? Though we don't see it unless you're a coder, most JPEGs and MP3s use 2 pi in their equations. Wouldn't it be more efficient to just have the letter tau instead? It would make that YouTube video load just a bit faster and help you buffer your Pandora so that you would never have that awkward pause in between songs again. And finally, number 3, is changing between pi and tau even feasible? At first glance, no, it's not. I spent many long hours arguing with my father about this. He just didn't seem to get the idea in his head that scientists and mathematicians don't like changing their minds. Him arguing with me was a perfect example. But then I started to think about how much just in the past 600 years we've changed our ideas. I mean, now it's commonly accepted that the Earth is round, that there is such a thing as infinity. Heck, when I was in kindergarten, Pluto was still a planet. It's not the people who are researching and applying it every day that are the problem. It's the textbooks and the people teaching pi that are going to have to be the ones to make the change. I'm not saying to spearhead a war against pi. Even I can honestly say I would rather be saving the planet from global warming than making circles easier to understand. But the revolution for tau has already started. From the Tau Manifesto by Michael Hartle to Google putting tau in their calculator. Tau is gaining momentum, and it won't be long before it's showing up in textbooks.